Well, welcome to Sam's Antique Motors. Today I thought I would talk a little bit about how I go about getting bolts black. A lot of these original equipment manufacturer bolts had a black finish to them. Going back as far as Model A's, they called those Raven head bolts, had a little dome on the top of the bolt, and they were this kind of blackened color. And today, there's a couple of different processes. Some of the reproduction part suppliers sell kits to do it, but what I've found is the best way to make bolts black and preserve the original bolts, many of which are unique links and unique heads and unique threads, is to use manganese phosphate. And that's essentially the same process gun makers use to parkerize guns, and it provides a corrosion layer that protects against rust and just makes them nice and pretty and black. And it's if you paint a bolt black, as soon as you put a wrench on it, it's going to knock the paint off. So this process gets them black, gets a nice finish, and it's relatively resistant to wrenches. You can scratch it, but it's reasonably durable. So that's what I use, and I spent about a day just going through every nut, bolt, and screw and bead blasting it. And the process is I have this little 2-burner cook stove I bought a long time ago, and I got 2 stainless pots from a kitchen supply house with a strainer, also from the kitchen supply house. And I use this is manganese phosphate. You can see by the label here, manganese phosphate. And it's sold by a lot of people. I got these from Duracoat, which sells gun bluing supplies and so forth. And so there's the manganese phosphate, which you mix for 4 parts water to 1 part of the phosphate and heat it up. And then after you get done with the phosphate treatment, Duracoat also sells the post-treatment solution. I have no idea what this is other than post-treatment solution. And that essentially just sort of seals off the bolts and makes that manganese process black and dark. You can just use WD-40, which is a water displacement, 40th formula, and spray it on there, and that displaces all the water off of it and kind of seals it up. But that's the real product, and I think the stuff is about 70 or 80 bucks a gallon. I bought this probably 4 years ago, and I've done a lot of bolts, and I still have quite a bit left here. So in one pot over here, I just have clean water, and I use rainwater since we collect it off the roof because it has no contaminants and it's nice and pure. And then this pot, I put the solution in, and I heat it up, and I boil the parts in this water solution for 4 or 5 minutes. That gets any oil off of them. It also gets them warm. And then I take it from here and put it over to here. And when I do that, that phosphate works its magic. It only takes a couple of minutes. Then I take it out of here and put it in the treatment and dry it off. And there you have it. So I'm gonna clean up some of these bolts, and then I'll show you how the process works. Now, I like to take all of the parts I take out and I store them in bags. So I label every part. In this case, the accelerator return springs for the throttle control. And I like to just keep everything in bags. And when I do this process, I do them sort of a bag at a time, so that I make sure I can keep track of which one's going back in which bags. These are a bunch of little miscellaneous screws. I'll just show you kind of what we start out with. These are a combination. 3 of these hold the windshield, the voltage regulator on, and the rest of these bolts go to the bed front panel, and then there's a whole bunch of little bitty tiny clips that go to the screws that hold the headlight lenses. Each of these different bolts are unique enough that I know what they go to, so I can do all these at one time, and then I'll split them off into the bags when I get done. So that's what it starts with. And Now I'll show you what I do next. So now we're entering the sandblast zone. This is a room that I built specifically to house all the sandblasting equipment, and the floor is actually dropped down so that it kind of keeps some of the dust and dirt inside this room. I have a 42-inch sandblast cabinet that I bought, man, probably 30 years ago. I was a kid when I bought this. Bought it with my own money. And this is a really handy machine. Put any kind of material in it, and I have a combination of glass and abrasive and aluminum oxide and all different kinds of things. And brought my basket of parts. And what I'm going to do is just place this basket of parts in this sandblaster. It's more or less the winter, so we got the fan unplugged, but I have the fan hooked to the electrical outlet, so when I turn on the switch, the light comes on, the vacuum comes on, and generally the fan comes on, but I've got it unplugged here in the winter. And this glass, I put electrical tape on the inside of it so that I can peel off a little piece at a time, because it slowly gets abraded to the point that it kind of frosts it and you can't see through it. So now the machine's on, and just put your hands in here and step on this pedal down here and you go to town. So I'm going to blast these bolts, and I'll show you what they look like when they come out. Okay, we're out of the sandblaster. It took me about 10 minutes to do it, and you can see these bolts are now all just bright metal, shiny clean. You know, if you take a look at this bolt, this is a very unique bolt. Holds the voltage regulator on. It's got a special shoulder that goes through a little insulating washer. So those are the kind of bolts that are worth bead blasting and saving. And I am using glass bead, which is, if you look in a microscope, they're literally just little bitty tiny round beads, and glass bead kind of polishes rather than abrades. So while I was in there, I turned on my burners, and I've got my water heated up, and I've got my solution heated up. So now we're ready to go. Well, I'm going to take this basket of bolts here, and I actually try not to really even touch them with my hands too much. So I'll really not touch those with my hands, and then get oil off your fingers. So I put it on a little wire so I can sandblast these, bead blast these, got those all cleaned up. And again, the water really just, if there is any oil on them, gets the oil off, and also gets them heated up. So we'll let this cook here for a few minutes and get that warmed up, and then we'll move it to the solution. Okay, now we got our parts warmed up. So you can see here they're all in here nice and warm. And what I do is just, so if I can do this with one hand, take the lid off, and I just drop this down in there, and you can see it's just starting to fizz. And when that fizzing stops, they're pretty much ready to come out of the solution. So it just takes a couple of minutes to do that. I'll just let that cook here for a minute, and I'll just kind of rattle them around a little bit, and then we'll put it in the post-treatment solution. Okay, we've been in the manganese phosphate solution. You can see it's kind of stopped fizzing, and now the bolts are a nice beautiful black. Everything looks pretty evenly coated in there, and so I just dump it into this very fancy vintage ice tray. I bet very few of you are lucky to have one of these. This was recovered back when you made your own ice. It's aluminum, so it resists all this solution. And by the way, this process pretty much only works on steel and iron. It doesn't do anything to stainless. That's why these pots are stainless, and it doesn't do anything to aluminum or brass. So sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but that's the process. Now we'll just take these and get a rag I happen to have over here in the rag department, and We'll dry these off. I just kind of wipe them off, get them cleaned up. And now you can see that's a really nice black bolt. And here's one of these sort of specialty shoulder bolts that goes with the voltage regulator. So now that looks like a brand new OEM bolt. So there you have it. That's the manganese phosphate process. And if I've got any QAnon followers out there, by the way, you can use this for your AR-10 and your AR-15 products as well.
Download the Resto-Rat app today to begin managing, tracking, and documenting your restoration project.